Welcome to Neurotic, the Internet Computer Podcast with Jesse and Kyle. This is episode 5. Kyle, we don't have time to talk about how you're doing. We have too much content to get to today. Our show notes are out of control.
Jesse, this is the episode we were waiting for when we started this journey.
I think so. Today is all about the NNS and NNS proposals. That is the theme of the show today. And we're going to start out with what I'm often accused of talking about too much, which is me. I'm submitting an NNS proposal, and I wanted to tell you about it.
Awesome. So I did read it, but I'm interested. Why don't you start back at the beginning? What's the proposal about?
Can I have your support? That's what I want to know.
We got to talk about it first.
You gotta see if it's up to snuff.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about this. So I am putting together an NNS proposal to be voted on and hopefully passed and become a part of the DFINITY and Internet Computer Operation. So it's a multi-step process. Step 1 is to create a forum post and kick off discussion and solicit feedback and notes from the community. And so that is what I have done. There's a link in the show notes. Everyone listening, please, you're invited to go read what I've written and chime in on the proposal. Good, bad, feedback, edits. I really want to hear it all and get engagement and buy-in from the community for this.
Do you want to kind of like go through what the proposal was? Give some of the specifics?
Yeah, so it's for the proposal is really all about sustainability. So I wrote an article a couple months ago where I investigated the sustainability and the carbon footprint of the internet computer. And this was really inspired by Solana put out a report about that every transaction uses the same electricity overhead as like 2 Google searches. And I said, well, I want to know how efficient the internet computer is by those same metrics, and can we compare it? And what I learned a couple things during it, one of which was that the internet computer was designed from the ground up to be really, really efficient and not use a proof of work style system like Bitcoin or Ethereum currently does. And instead, it was really designed with an original blockchain architecture to be super, super efficient. And not only is it efficient on the blockchain side, it actually can replace a lot of traditional IT infrastructure with ICP's serverless infrastructure and save a ton of electricity writ large. And I wanted to prove it. And what I discovered was there was no hard numbers really detailing exactly what the electrical consumption of the internet computer was, and not proving sort of its place as a green blockchain. And so my NNS proposal really aims to change that and move ICP forward as a sustainable architecture. My proposal has 3 key points built into it that I'm looking for feedback on, and I want to base the center of the proposal on. One is to ask DFINITY to conduct a audit and give real answers. How many kilowatt hours of electricity is required for a transaction? What does running the whole system really entail? And either do that through a third-party audit or create hard numbers from internal tools. I want the internet computer community to ratify that it believes in global warming and to be on the right side of working towards solving it and preventing, catastrophe. Because I like living on this planet and would like to continue to do so, and would like my home to not be underwater 8 years from now when these neurons mature. And then finally, I want data. You love data, I love data. So I would like them to add an energy consumption reporting panel to the IC network status dashboard. And so those are the 3 key pieces. And so this has been posted to the DFINITY forums. We're soliciting feedback. About a week from now, I'm going to take all the notes and put up a rewritten, edited version of the proposal incorporating those notes. A week after that, I'm going to post it to the NNS, and then we are off to the races. So I am embarking on the journey of an NNS politician. As a successful proposer yourself, Kyle, what advice do you have for me?
Just don't take it too serious, and remember that you're going to get some good feedback, and some of it you should definitely take to heart, and then others, you can't make everyone happy, so sometimes you just have to move forward. I mean, this one particularly, you're kind of touching on some political aspects that you might just get completely unrelated to the internet computer. You might get some feedback there, because essentially what you're asking for is to really like there's a specific request to the Definity Foundation to produce these results and then to make them public and live data. But then also it's a proposal aimed to kind of just reach consensus that energy efficiency is something that the community believes in, and that we consider to be maybe one of the metrics that we want to measure and grade the network against, right?
That's exactly right. And so, yeah, I agree. I think, I'm definitely kind of stepping into some political waters, which is, for someone that thinks this is a big, important issue to save the world, it's frustrating to me that it is a political issue at all, because I think, and a big argument I make is that adopting this proposal and having a strong green sustainability policy is good for business. And as someone that spends his time marketing the internet computer, this is a arrow I want in my quiver to go out and fight for the internet computer. Because I think my prediction is I believe the data will reveal that the internet computer is the world's greenest blockchain. And I want to shout that from the rooftops, and I want hard data to back that up, because I think there's such a broad perspective that crypto is really, really bad for the environment and toxic for the environment because of how Bitcoin works, because of how Ethereum works, that I want this weapon available to me to fight back against that FUD and go out there and sell the internet computer as the future of the internet.
Right. Because, I mean, so even on that, like you could believe green technology or the green political pressure is hogwash or something like that, right? You can be on that side of the coin. But regardless of that, using electricity efficiently means that from a business perspective, the internet computer is going to have less costs, and so even just from like a business perspective, it's just something that we should be aware of, and something that we should have the number on.
You don't have to vote for it for ethical reasons. You can vote for it for cold, hard capitalist reasons. I don't care what your reason is as long as you vote for it. And so right now I'm trying to build consensus. Kyle, I want your buy-in. I would like your vote for this proposal. And everyone else listening, I would like your vote too. But we're not at the voting stage. We are at the feedback stage. And so please, I want to encourage everyone to go read my post. Feedback is welcome. Constructive feedback, actionable feedback, things you'd like changed, things you'd like improved. I hope there's some people in there that argue that it should be stronger. I tried to strike a balance between having it be some actionable items and also some big symbolic wins too. And then it lays a groundwork for the future direction of the sustainability and sort of our whole approach to electrical usage with the internet computer.
I really like that you put it in the forum for deliberation, discussion. There's a two-way communication street there. You didn't just post it to the NNS with no explanation and no feedback mechanism. So job well done, Jesse. I think you're kind of following good governance practices, and if nothing else, you're showing us the proper way to kind of conduct one of these proposals.
Now, Kyle, what you just did there is what we call in the podcasting industry a segue, where you real smoothly moved us from one topic to another. Has someone posted some proposals that did not go through the forum? Is that what you're hinting at here?
There was been a little bit of something I caught wind of. I don't know, not a real big deal. We could probably move on to NFTs if you want.
No, man, get out your popcorn because we are diving in here. I am very excited to hear your take on this and talk about it and dig through it. So the NNS has been the recipient, let's say, of a series of spam NNS proposals from user, I'm going to pronounce it YSims. I'm not sure how to pronounce his Twitter name, but I'm calling it YSims. And if that's incorrect, someone will tell me on the internet I'm wrong. I'm sure it happens all the time. Let's walk through a little bit of history of sort of what happened and how we got here.
For where do we start with this? So just fair warning, I'm at like a 6 in terms of my mood and energy level. I may go to a 10 by the end of this conversation, because this is.
I'm going to get you fired up. I'm excited. I want to see Kyle at 11.
At an 11, oh my gosh, that's like the Hulk. Well, here let's start with what's happening, right? So Y Sims is self-identified as a high schooler who has figured out how to submit proposals and has said, so I don't know if it's male or female. I'm probably going to just say he, just for keeping things short and not having to constantly go he she. But
You could go they. I don't mind.
they, yeah, okay. So Y Sims, they submitted a couple of proposals a few days ago, basically explicitly saying these proposals um, are just to get governance rewards for the people who are voting. Um, that's how it started out, and that was a problem that was identified months ago within the IC community. That once we weighted governance proposals a certain to be 20x, at that point there became an incentive to have proposals to vote on whether those proposals were good or not. Just having a governance proposal would produce results or produce higher rewards for people who are actively voting or following a neuron with their governance topics. So YSIMS is basically taking advantage of that, very publicly saying he's going to do 7 days, 2 a day, and that will go even more if he receives donations. So that's where we're at. We're getting these. What started off as the goal was to increase governance rewards has turned into a grab bag of I don't know what you call it, maybe complaints, maybe threat detection. It's been a roller coaster ride, and at this point, I'm not quite sure what the intent is anymore, other than um, maybe some combination of multiple things. Where do we want to go with this, Jesse? That's the history.
I'd like to read a little bit from his first proposal to help set the stage here. So, in his first proposal, he broke it up into a couple sections, and he has a section here called Epilogue. Please forgive me for using such a strange tone and format to initiate a proposal. I am a high school student, not a developer, not familiar with Markdown, bad English, use Google Translate. Sorry. 14 ICPs are enough for my living expenses for 1 month within 7 days. If you agree with my point of view and benefit from it, please actively participate in governance. If you think the proposal process is too cumbersome, you can transfer ICP to this address, and he gives an address. As long as the account has enough balance to initiate a proposal, then I will insist on sending 2 motion proposals every day.
YSIMS has received donations. Last time I checked was, I think, Wednesday. And there were 2 donations of 20 ICP. So I guess from that perspective, we have more proposals coming than just the 7 days. I will say I did a little bit of data detective. Those 2 did come from whales within the IC ecosystem, who I think are enjoying this because they're getting these higher rewards well beyond their 20 ICP donations. That's neither here nor there. Let me I think an important thing before we dive into this specific use case, this YSIMS use case, I think it's important to keep in mind that there's day-to-day drama, and then there's long-term effectiveness. I'm mostly concerned with long-term effectiveness, and so from this, I see through the lens of this drama is what are we going to learn from it? What changes are we going to make to become more resilient? But that's it. Like long term, if we got to keep that long term mindset in mind, and that we're trying to do something that really humanity's not done before with the NNS. And so there's going to be fits, and we're going to have false steps, and we're going to make mistakes, and we're going to just have to learn from it and continue to evolve and get better. So that's I hope everyone's approaching this from that same mindset, that we're building a better system. And just use the analogy, it's kind of like back in the late 1700s, when the United States had won the Revolutionary War, and sorry, Brits, and we were trying to form basically a more perfect union. Was that Lincoln who said that? But essentially, there was, people forget that we had the Confederate States, right, where the first attempt at democracy was actually heavily state rights. That didn't work. And then we tried this federal government. The constitutional conventions were messy, a lot of yelling, a lot of opinions. And nobody probably during that process would have said, oh, there's going to be a government structure that comes out of this that's going to last centuries. In fact, they were worried that it would fall apart within years. But really, what ended up coming out of it is that, and that's kind of where we're at here, is we're going to have some messiness, and what we need is a good, strong constitution, a good, strong agreement from the community that produces resilience. That's my long term view.
I'm still scared the US government is going to fall apart in years, but I feel like that's a separate conversation.
That's separate. Well, the track record is what, 250 years, coming up on 250. Well, I guess if you count the first 8 years as a mistake, then we're at like 240. That's not bad. That's not bad for a country.
Yeah, but we just had to erase that, reset it to 0 days since insurrection, so. All right, this is getting too spicy. Let's get back on track.
All right, so
a series of proposals came in. They explained my goal is to maintain the high rate of governance returns. This is an exploitable attack, I'm going to call it, and I am going to make use of it because I am trying to get money, and this is a loophole. So I'm engaging with the system. I'm using the system not as intended, but as it allows within the bounds of the system, and then posting them. And he started out with some posts explaining it. There was some kind of proposals in some of the early ones. We don't need to go through the exact details, but he even posted in their description as they posted them, he was like, I don't have time to really work on this one today, so this one just does nothing in it. And so I'm just gonna come out with my take right up front here, which is I believe this should be treated as a malware attack. That ASIM stated that the intention is to extract money from the community, to increase rewards, and to leverage and exploit in the system. And it is available, and I'm going to take advantage of it, is the message. And so I've seen a lot of conversations that are really trying to engage and trying to have conversations and trying to point out this is a good idea, this is a bad idea, this feels hostile, this feels collaborative. And I think people are being way, way too nice. I think this should be treated as a bad faith, hostile actor, and should be treated as a security threat as opposed to a difference.
So yeah, I agree on to a certain degree on that. Certainly. So for me, there was some big red flags in terms of the NNS should never be used for personal gain. So people should never solicit donations through the NNS, my opinion.
I'm gonna stop you right there. Aren't we all using the NNS for personal gain? Isn't that literally what we're all here for right now? See, I said I was going to be bad cop, and then I turned into worst cop right away.
Yeah. Hey, keep all this in. This is good stuff, by the way.
Oh yeah, none of this is hidden in the cutting room floor.
No, we don't really have a cutting room floor for the most. This is unfiltered Jesse and Kyle. No, that's a good point. But what I mean is we can't have a mindset where we value the individual over top of the community or over top of really the ecosystem. And so the solicitation, using the NNS to solicit ICP, should be a giant no-no. Second thing, I think that should be a giant that honestly we should be disgusted about, and I don't think that we as a community have voiced this enough, is the calling, because in one of the proposals it actually said the designers of the front end of the NNS should be fired, and that is unacceptable in my opinion. That anyone should call for the firing of any employee, particularly in Definity, using the NNS for that. So,
God, I keep on being like, I want to argue one side, and then I hear your point, and I'm like, I want to poke at it a little bit. So,
poke.
You are suggesting that a series of social norms of what is acceptable should be the deciding what gets posted to the NNS or not to the NNS. And I think ASIMS has correctly pointed out that we live in a time of a complete breakdown of society, and that social norms are nowhere near strong enough guardrails for any kind of government system anymore. I think that's been well perceived. I don't want to get into politics and just keep wandering back over there. Why shouldn't, if the rules and the code is law, Social norms have nothing to do with it. If the blockchain code allows for it, why shouldn't ASIMs take advantage of it?
So yes, that's a great point, and in my opinion, that is the flaw is that the code as law doesn't account for human behavior, and humans need to collaborate, and humans need trust. The entire crypto industry is based on the fact that it produces trustless environment, so that you can trust the code. The problem is
The problem is the humans.
no. So if we don't have social norms in the NNS, because there is a human element and a collaboration, we're not going to produce a resilient system. So within Bitcoin, it's easy because you don't need to change, you don't need to evolve. That's the point of Bitcoin, is that it doesn't evolve. In technologies or societies or anything that does need to evolve, you need to have some sort of agreement of social norms to allow for collaboration and allow for effective communication. So if we don't at least draw the line somewhere, then what we're going to find is this is going to become a wasteland of people who just fight and bicker, maybe kind of like Twitter or something, and the NNS will never be able to really become what it can be, right? So even again, going back to that analogy of the founding fathers of the United States, and I apologize because I know this podcast is listened to throughout the world, and it's perhaps unfair that I'm just being very U.S. centric. Let's just talk general. In any type of human interaction that produces any kind of resilient system, there is social norms of how to produce that system. I think we at least should draw the line that, hey, it's a disgrace to call for the firing of Definity employees in an NNS proposal, or to put your personal wallet in there for the purpose of enriching yourself. Now, that's not to say that I disagree with everything YSIMS is doing. There's certainly things, and I'm looking at my show notes. There's things.
You're making me agree with YSIMS as you go right now, because I think YSIMS is arguing that the guardrails are made of cotton candy, and I agree, I guess, with them that they are made of cotton candy, and that's the problem.
It sounds
But
delicious.
I also think, cotton candy is delicious, but I don't want it to keep my car from careening off the cliff. Is the problem.
So why would that be cotton candy?
Because social norms don't prevent the spam attack from already taking place. That what we need are guardrails that prevent this from being possible in the first place. Because I agree, the humans, you're making a real HAL 9000 problem. The humans are the messy part of this. And so relying on we are a international Bitcoin, or cryptocurrency based community. We should have, our rules should be enshrined in the blockchain, in the code, in the DAO. And so I agree that in being kind of a huge asshole, ASIMS has pointed out this flaw. However, it has been pointed out in the form of a black hat hostile attack, as opposed to a white hat hostile attack. And when you choose to go down that path, never mind the social norms piece of calling for the firing of, of course, there already is an NNS UI upgrade in the works. It's on the roadmap. It's coming.
Right.
A lot of those arguments are a thin veneer over the ransomware attack just below the surface. Mm-hmm. And so I agree with the takeaway that the response to this should be reinforcing a system that never allows for the benefits of a spam attack. There should be no upside and only downside of participating in a bad faith engagement in the NNS. And it's an existing flaw in the NNS's current design that you're able to benefit from a bad faith attack. And instead, it should be, maybe we should 10 ICP to put up, a proposal. And you get 9 of them back if it fails, but you get none of them back if you get flagged as spam. And so there's different approaches being there. It's interesting how I feel like the response to this has been like a laser beam shot at a disco ball, where the one question goes in and 1,000 different solutions explode out onto the scene. Some of which are very good, some of which are terrifyingly worse than what ASIMS is doing in the first place. And so that conversation has gotten kicked off. And so this initial boost. Let's get back to the kind of the facts here, I guess, a little bit.
So, well,
So
hold on. I want to add something before, because I do want to
yeah,
get
do
into
it.
the facts. But I want to make this clear. So again, going back to that idea that there's a short-term problem that needs to be addressed. There's a couple short-term problems that need to be addressed. That's what we'll get into with the facts. There's a longer-term thing that I'm actually really concerned about, or not really concerned in the sense that I'm worried, but I really want us to be focused on that. Is that long-term, if we can figure out how we collaborate, how we discuss things, how we make decisions. If we can figure that out, that's how you get long-term resilience, and that's how you have an NNS that's going to last for decades. Short term, now figuring out those things isn't going to solve anything in the short term, which is what you're talking about with the spam attack, right? Those are technical. There's technical solutions to solve short term, but again, I want to come back to just making sure like those social norms and what we call social norms is really just our rules of engagement for discussion and how we're going to come about making decisions. That I think we want to make sure that we're putting effort into that as well, so that we can be resilient in the future and make good decisions. If you can make good decisions time after time, it's going to be successful. So let's get
I
back to
like
the facts.
I like your use of no. Now we're not going back to facts. We're staying right here. I like your use of rules of engagement, because if you break the rules of engagement in real life in a military setting, you get court-martialed, and you break the rules of engagement in the NNS setting, and you get governance participation bonuses, and that's the
Yeah,
problem that I'm getting at here. So I actually think I'm being a little argumentative to make for good
makes a good
podcasting. I
podcast.
actually think you make a really, I think we're saying a lot of the same things. I just want to take the kid gloves off in terms of how the response to this particular, honestly, I guess there is no way to do that, right, in the super short term, because the rules we play by right now are the rules we play by, and it will take an NNS proposal in a few weeks to a new governance proposal, which we will all get extra benefits from voting on, to resolve.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we really could solve this really quickly. At least make the spam more expensive by and a new drivers has suggested this is, look, just increase. So right now it costs one ICP to make a proposal. If the proposal is accepted, the one ICP is returned. If it's rejected, it gets basically locked until the neuron dissolves, and then it gets burned. Um, what we could just do is make that 5 or 10 or 20 ICP, which then just makes it really expensive to keep spanning the network. That can be executed. So it'd take 4 days to get that proposal voted on. And if it was approved on the NNS, that could be executed within minutes, because it's just the code change is just like a number on one line of code. So that is something we could do. That could be a short-term fix, but then there's also within the forum a lot of good discussion, a lot of good ideas being brought up of longer-term fixes, because there's a good argument that if you want to really let anyone make a proposal, you have to keep that cheap. So I think there's hesitancy around that, increasing that minimum for long-term. I will say honestly, my thinking on it is also, if you had like a 10 or a 20 ICP minimum to make a proposal, it does lock out any one individual from being able to do it, but it might actually enable collaboration, so that if you had a good idea, getting donations to raise up that minimum 10 or 20 ICP might actually be part of the filtering mechanism for how many people actually want this, and are there people in the community who want to put their money behind it and take that risk.
Well, now you've given me the opportunity, because I actually genuinely disagree with this one here, not
Good.
just theoretically for the sake of argument. As someone putting forth a proposal that doesn't just have a bunch of spare ICP lying around, I think one ICP is perfectly legitimate. I think instead, I think there, again, ASIM started with some interesting arguments and then just lost them over time as the pressure of what is really going on here got sort of dissolved the facade. I
Yeah.
think on one of the early complaints was how collected and controlled the NNS actually is by a small group of actors that control it, and so dramatically raising the price of participation would solve that while actually doubling down on the problem of consolidating power. So instead, what I could foresee is some sort of system where right now, I think eliminating the social norms of the situation and replacing the existing social norms that actually work really well with code is law solutions that NNS proposals have to flow through. So in this case, we were just
Mhm.
talking about with my proposal, I started out on the forums and a proposal will flow through the forums into the NNS. And so some sort of graduation system that will promote uh, these proposals from a forum post into the NNS and allow for people to vote, sort of a good faith, bad faith button or something like that, I think is really good. Where, again, I want the system and the code is law to embrace the DAO center, the DAO nuggety center of this entire thing, right? And that's the piece. And so the tools we have to work with are the tools of a blockchain DAO. And so our solutions should be really cemented in a blockchain DAO solution.
I prefer to not hear about a proposal through the NNS, right? I don't. If so, for me personally, if somebody hasn't posted to the forum or at least socialized their idea over social media or somehow where I would actually experience it, the bar for me to vote yes is much higher. Only because it's hard to make a decision within a couple of days on a very weighty matter. And so that's kind of some feedback I'd give anyone thinking to do a proposal. It's good to socialize that in a way that can have two-way conversation, right? The NNS is just a megaphone. All you're doing is broadcasting out a message. There's no way for people to give you feedback, and that's like an inherent problem that YSIMS is kind of facing. Is that even if they put out this a proposal that people agree with, people don't agree with the process they use to put that out. And I mean, in decision making, the process is just as important as the decision to be made. So that would be just a call to like you're doing, Jesse. Somehow socialize the idea so you can get feedback, but also so that way when it comes up to a vote, people aren't getting like flat-footed from like, holy cow, I didn't expect this was coming, and now I have to kind of formulate an idea around this and whether I agree with it or don't agree with it. And here's some questions I have. Just simple things like that. If I have questions on your proposal, I'm not going to vote yes because I want these things to be answered. And so you might have a great idea that I personally vote no, and maybe, and I know a lot of other people kind of vote similarly. Like, hey, these are questions I have on it. Had you addressed these questions in the proposal, I might have voted yes. And I wish I could have voted yes, but I don't know the answers to these questions. So I have to vote no. And then hope that we can go back to square one and talk about it. So
Yeah, and in one of the first proposed, and again, ASIMS, I'm giving them a hard time. They have been engaging in the forums now with some threads that Wenzel has started, and there's been some dialogue, still somewhat hostile, but there has been dialogue. So when I started shopping my idea for a proposal around to smart people to kind of rally a little early support, make sure I wasn't going completely, I didn't want to blindside people. I
yeah.
wanted people to know it was coming. I wanted feedback. I showed it to you because I showed it to smart people that I said, hey, what do you think of this?
Mm-hmm.
One of the big pieces of feedback I got was to call for actionable feedback at
Mm-hmm.
the end of it. I don't just want to hear what you think. I want to hear what we should do. And so that's my challenge for you and I right now. I want to generate, you and I are going to fix this right now. We're going to provide some actionable feedback. So walk me through some of the proposals for solutions that have come up in the forums. And then you and I are going to pick a few and we're going to fix this right here live on the podcast. All right.
Oh my gosh.
We're going to do it.
So you're failing because we gotta socialize them first, right? That's the point.
No, this is the beginning of the socializing.
Okay. So here I'll give a couple of the
people are
ideas
listening to this right now, they're fully socialized on our.
But they can't respond. They can't respond to us.
The proposals are like my pandemic baby. They only have ever seen other proposals in the mirror. They've never met other proposals. They don't get to go to parks very often to meet other proposals at the same development. Is this analogy still working? I think it might be breaking down. So let's talk about some of the different solutions. And then I think I'm serious though. I want you and I to kind of pick and choose and kind of say, here's what our dream solution is. Here's what we think, here's what we'd like to see in a solution. Here's some of the things that are structured. I want to get to that actionable feedback. So walk me through some of the different solutions and then I will shit on them.
Okay. Yeah. So solution one, let's call it, is the one we talked about it already, raising the minimum threshold for making a proposal. Solution two,
I don't like that one at all. I think raising the cost of the proposal makes it more difficult, makes There already is an imbalance in the NNS where the richer you are and the more invested you are, the more power you have.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, while there's a lot of legitimate reasons for that, because it functions, in this case, it's a lot like, almost, there's a parallel to voting rights in a company based on the stock you have, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
the more invested you are, literally the more invested you are.
Yeah.
And so I think that already balances the scales so heavily to the whales and the rich people out there, of which I am not one yet. And so I don't think raising the cost of entering, and with a good idea, I think a good idea is a high enough bar as it is. So I reject raising the price as a solution.
So again, remember the price is only of a rejected proposal. So if you have a neuron, let's say the minimum proposal price got bumped up to 10 ICP. If you have a
Right.
neuron with 10 ICP in it, you can make a proposal. If it's accepted, you still have 10 ICP in it.
Right.
Honestly, even if it's rejected, you still have 10 ICP. It's just when you dissolve your neuron, 10 ICP is going to be taken out. So I think you're actually still even earning maturity on that 10 ICP, even though
Right.
it's been rejected. Okay.
So the argument is, right now, the cost is low. The cost of rejection is lower than the upside of rejection, but that's only true based on how much you have staked. So
Mhm.
if you're making a profit when you lose one ICP on a rejected idea, but you have enough staked that your governance participation bonus generates enough rewards that it's still worthwhile to do it. If we raise the price to 10, the solution is to have 10 times more money staked, and the math still works out the same.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, you could still spam, and so it makes it so that spamming is profitable only to even
The
bigger
ultra
whales.
wealthy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've
Okay.
had enough of hearing from the whales. Had enough
Yeah.
of their blubber,
Okay. So
their
okay.
whale songs.
Essentially the you know I don't, maybe there's a whale or two out there who want to spam, and honestly you could bump it up even more if you wanted to. Okay, so I see what your point is.
I've rejected the idea. Let's
Yeah,
keep moving. We'll
you've
come
moved
back.
on. Yeah, I'm gonna
Maybe
move on because
you'll turn me around. I'm open to being turned around later, but so far, keep me. All right, next idea I don't like.
it's
Let's go.
so the okay, so hold on. The appeal of that first idea is that it's executable now. It's a simple
Right.
line of code. Every idea after this is going to be something that would take development time, so it's not executable for, let's say, the next 3 weeks.
All of these ideas would require an NNS proposal being passed, so there is time
Right.
that is going to go by for any of them. And I would argue I would much rather spend 3 weeks solving it in a real way than the solution being quick and dirty isn't a selling point for the solution. In fact, it's a mark against it.
It at least stops things happening right now, I guess, is the appeal.
We could also just flood the NNS with so many good governance spam things that it outweighs the effect of those too, right? We could just offer twice as many governance proposals as well.
Right. Yeah.
All right, so we've covered moving. I want to move on. We've covered
All right.
raising the price. Will you give me the next one?
All right. So number 2, let's call that the Kyle and Wenzel solution. So this is one that Wenzel, Bartlett, and I kind of co-sponsored together. It is essentially what we did back with governance topics, where we removed the default following of Definity, and then everyone had to go in and update their followee or vote manually. Doing that exact same thing for the all topics, what that would produce is essentially you're going to have so right now there's let's say 50% of the voting power that is not actively voting and didn't make the decision to follow Definity. It was what was defaulted for them, and that's where those governance rewards are coming from, is that when people are voting on governance rewards, those people aren't following because they never logged in and did that. So we'd essentially do that for their other ones, so their rewards would go to 0, and the incentive of governance rewards would kind of negate out. So it would become a lot smaller. That difference between days where there is a governance proposal and days when there's not a governance proposal, that difference in the spread of rewards would become negligible. So that's idea number 2. Most people don't. We've gotten a lot of kickback on that because people don't like the idea of messing with other people's neurons after the fact. So
If you're going to argue both sides of this, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do on this podcast anymore, because you just made.
You're just here to listen.
I'm just here to learn at the knee of the master.
You're gonna look good.
I mean, looking good is tough in an audio only medium, but I guess that's my advantage with a face made for podcasting.
A face made for podcasting.
I think there's a reasonable complaint to be made there that we, in some ways, the way the governance rules got changed mid-game has been tough and created this scenario. And it feels like that solution to me is doubling down on that problem instead of resolving it.
So you're mocking my idea, or not? You're knocking it down, and so I'm
not mocking. I'm taking it very seriously. I am providing actionable, critical feedback. I think here's what I would say. I think the key idea of, hey, we have, through these actions of changing the way governance rewards are handled, and through, in a lot of ways, demoing the behavior of how to spam the governance topic too, we have created this beast, right? We have created this situation. And so I think the end goal of that solution of eliminating this outweighing solution of the governance rewards is good, but it feels like it's kind of more of the same solution that got us into this situation in the first place. But I like where you're getting it though, getting it too.
So I don't disagree with what you said. And I agree. So let's call idea number 3. Essentially you'd almost get to the same point, but it's just to reverse back the weightings of governance proposals. So every proposal would be worth 1, and the incentives of governance proposals would go. There would be really a very little meaningful reason to spam for the basis of getting more rewards on governance proposals. So that's idea number 3. That actually kind of has the same outcome as idea number 2 for the most part. Idea 4, let's see, what is another idea so there's the Dom suggestion. So Dom put this out on Twitter, where one idea is you could have somebody makes a new proposal, and there's maybe a randomized group of neurons. So basically you put in a proposal, and then the system randomly picks, let's say 100 neurons, and says, hey, is this proposal good enough to move on to the next stage, which would be for the whole NNS to vote on. So you'd have a small selection of neurons that got to decide whether or not a proposal was good enough to move on. So that's another suggestion. There's a good tweet by Andra. Gosh, this might be a part you have to edit out. I can't remember Andra's last name.
Andra from District?
From District, yeah.
Great community member. I'll just plug my other project. She dropped by my Twitter Spaces this week, and then I pulled her up on stage, and we ended up spending 30 minutes talking about Socialfy and District, and it was super, super interesting. And I will put a link to that in the show notes.
Phenomenal community member, and she's got a lot of great ideas and a lot of great insight from other crypto projects as well. But anyways, her point was, hey, that's moving away from decentralization. We're giving, even though it's randomized, we're giving power to a small group of people, and that's not the direction we should go. So that's fair enough. And another idea. So then the 5th idea, I'm just trying to think of all these ones. There's been a crazy week of these ideas, but a 5th idea is, hey, maybe you vote not yay or nay on a proposal, but yay, nay, spam. And if enough people vote that this proposal was spam, then there's a penalty to whoever proposed it. So the community can then decide what is spam and what isn't spam.
So there's a lot I like there. The problem, as again always, is the humans. The humans are the problem there, where I could see the spam button being abused where people would hit the spam button where they mean no in order to punish the person submitting the proposal.
Yeah, I could see that. Though, that also would be voting something that was serious as spam would also be detrimental, at least to that community member. Maybe that's the point, is you want to punish that community member, but doing that, but that also kind of kicks that community, makes it less likely that that community member wants to stay part of the community. But yeah, no, that's a good point.
I think you're arguing exactly what I'm saying, that spam button could easily be used for abuse.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got Dom's tweet here, which I sent you with the tag of "I like that Dom agrees with me," where he calls this a bribery attack.
Yeah.
One of the ideas I've seen floated, and I don't have a technical implementation solution to this, but I think is really interesting, is it forcing a process of discussion and being voted out of discussion. I think is a really good idea, which is actually something. Again, I hate to use the U.S. government as a functioning example of a functioning government in any context these days, but there is there's debate, and then debate has to be closed for a bill to move out of debate and into being voted on. And so I think a system where a debate has to essentially be closed in the forums, or it has to be voted out of the forums, is a really interesting and novel idea. And so if someone wants to spam, it wouldn't solve the spam problem, gets moved into the forums, maybe. But there are lots of upvoting or solutions for dealing, that's social media. Reddit has solved a lot of these problems pretty effectively,
Right.
in terms of how to manage communities like that. And so a proposal has to move, doesn't start in the NNS, it starts in the forums, and it gets promoted out of the forums into the NNS. And so it goes through like a waiting period to get there. I think is actually a novel and good idea. We created an imbalance with how valuable the rewards for governance voting is, and that imbalance needs to be resolved. The root issue there is because Dfinity stopped voting and the Internet Computer Association stopped voting on governance proposals. It means that the people voting on governance proposals shrunk dramatically, which also was kind of changing the game for changing the rules of the game midway as well for people that staked. I actually have some sympathy that if you staked and you followed, you were told this system will work as intended, and you are kind of unfairly losing out. I'm not sure. The liquid democracy system of the follow neurons encourages that kind of participation, and now we have a system that's actually punishing people for using the system as intended, as a passive follower.
So yeah, and I would argue that and this might actually be a fundamental difference that probably might be a thread in a lot of these kind of conversations moving forward. But I would not agree with the idea that the system's designed to encourage passive participation. From my understanding, again going all the way back to Genesis, as I learned about the NNS, is that the NNS is aiming to have active participation. It's not supposed to just be, I want to make 20% on my money, and that's and so I'm going to stake my ICP in the NNS. It's more, I want to be part of the governance of the system. So I honestly don't. I understand that argument to a point, and I do feel bad if somebody thought that they were going to get rewards and then they find out they're not after the fact. But to a certain degree, I'm also like, well, people should be, and actually that's particularly true for early investors.
Isn't setting a follow neuron participation, like we created a tool that said here is a way of participating that doesn't require manual voting,
right?
And now it's been demoted because you're not taking manual action.
Well, so remember, for the vast majority of the time, and even still today, if you create a neuron in the NNS for all governance, for all but governance topics, you default to Dfinity, right? Or the ICA. I can't remember which one. So you can't even argue that people made a active decision to follow Dfinity, and then we took that away from them. It was just defaulted there.
They made a passive decision to follow Dfinity.
Right. So my whole point is that if and I'm sure there's going to be people who are going to scream at me for saying this, and I understand the arguments for screaming at me for saying this, but I expect that people who are participating in the NNS, or people who have staked in the NNS, that they're at least taking small measures to stay up to date with what is going on within the system. And therefore, if the tokenomics were to change, that they would at least be aware of it within a reasonable amount of time. Um, that being said, it's also understandable if there's a lot of spam on the system that you might just not, you might check out because it's too hard to read what the good things are through all the junk coming through. So
Yeah, I think of this, it's almost like a governance arbitrage opportunity would be kind of a way to describe it, right? We've created an incentive that incentivizes behavior that we don't like, and the code allows for that behavior, and the only thing we have standing in the way is social norms.
yeah,
And so what I want to see is those social norms converted into code and converted into real guardrails, not guardrails made of delicious cotton candy, as
oh
we
god,
discussed earlier. Now I just want cotton candy.
yeah. Now I'm dreaming of that.
I'm going to submit an NNS proposal to buy Jesse some cotton candy, and then eliminate the incentive for this behavior. Because I like the Dfinity, the org, moving to a decentralized place, right? That's the whole idea behind them, is them taking one hand off the steering wheel and letting the community put one hand on and take their place, and trying to transition to a generally decentralized system. And this is the way it goes. This is, everyone complains that ICP isn't decentralized enough, and then Dfinity makes direct moves to become more centralized, decentralized, and everyone goes, whoa, things are getting crazy, right? I mean, this gets right to that core political philosophy argument of why are most governments not direct democracies and instead are representative democracies, where you vote for people. Again, people are messy and people are the problem here. You vote for people and then they represent you and make those votes. And so there's a level of separation between the direct people and the people that are actually doing the voting. And I think the follow neuron solution is so interesting as a compromise between those two things. So I only manually vote on resolutions, Kyle, that you put in. And besides that, I set my follow neurons largely to Dfinity, ICA, and then the ICP maximalist network for all governance topics, which you also are one of the 13 people voting on. And so I'm still just following you around everywhere. I actually kind of disagree. I think the system is designed to allow passive participation. And I think if the system allows, if we want people to log in once a month, then the rule should be people have to log in once a month, right? Like, I think it should be one or the other. And if we think it's that important that everyone needs to manually vote, and you're not going to get your full rewards if you don't manually vote, we should just eliminate follow neurons, and it should be all manual voting, right? And I understand what you're saying is, hey, you need to spend 3 minutes, log in, update your follow neuron for governance, and the entire issue goes away. But I don't like the idea of us changing how the follows work. And so I think I actually come down on, we adjust the tokenomics of governance to compensate for the situation that we've created. And so one of the other solutions I've seen tossed around here was one where basically the governance bonus becomes set on no matter how many resolutions there are. And so the governance ones could be calculated slightly differently in a way. I mean, wouldn't it be easier just to go in and set everyone to follow the ICP maximalist network for governance?
So I would not, I wouldn't recommend that, right? Putting in a named neuron for either governance or non-governance solves the problem. I don't think that's true. It solves it here now, but I also don't think that people should set a followee, should follow a neuron and then never think about it again. You should basically, just like you do for your politicians, you should set your following, and then you should evaluate, is this group or this person or this other neuron, is it voting in a way that I agree with? And if the answer to that ever becomes no, then you should look for another neuron to follow. And that's what I mean about that active versus passive. I don't want to get into a system where everyone just sets one and then they forget it for 8 years, and then there's no incentive for neurons. I mean, there already really isn't incentive for like the ICP-MN. Like, people, like, there's no incentive of being part of the ICP-MN other than I can say I'm part of the ICP-MN. It's a lot of work, but it would especially not be if I knew that everyone who's following us is not going to even evaluate our performance. Then I might not even really care about how I want to vote, or I might become a little bit more corrupt or something like that. There should always be a risk that somebody's going to pull their votes away from you. And I think that the community, the NNS participants should always keep that on there. I did want to go back before I lose my my time here, Jesse. Is I want to go back to a point you made, which is there was a time and age. I don't want to lose track of the progress we've made as a community, because if you just go back 4 or 5 months ago, when Definity decided not to vote on governance proposals, a typical governance proposal would get maybe 3 to 5% of the voting power. Now, when Definity doesn't vote on a governance proposal, we're getting do some quick math. We're getting 27% of the voting power that votes. And then Definity has another 22%. So there is a clear progress that we're making as a community. And let's not lose track of that. So, people say like, oh, we created this problem by doing this whole governance weighting and, taking away the default following of Definity and all that. Yes, we caused this problem, but we also solved a massive risk that we had where anyone with 3% of the voting power had full control over the governance, or any group of neurons that had that, so we're progressing. And I think that at least we should all be patting ourselves on the back. We're making progress.
I want to fight you, but it's hard when you make such compelling points. This is why I just set my fellow neuron to you, is you got this figured out. Okay, so let's kind of go back to what do we want to see in an outcome from our current situation. We want to see governance rewards continue to promote high quality engagement and governance, both on the voting and the submitting. We want a process that engages the community and encourages debate and punishes spamming or abusing the system. And so maybe that's kind of now I come full circle. I'm like, well, maybe it should just be 100, 100, or maybe there should be. But I think maybe a stopgap in forums. I like the idea of it has to go through the forums. And I like the idea that it has to graduate from the forums. And the graduating from the forums, you don't have to vote yes or no on the proposal. You just vote, this is a high quality proposal, or this is not a high quality proposal. And it doesn't necessarily punish. Bad faith actors could get washed out before they get the big stage of the NNS. I want to make it impossible, not disincentivized, for bad faith engagement.
Yeah, and you could. What I like about that is that could be enforced either in code if you wanted to bring the forum into the code process somehow, or it could just be conducted through social norms, right? So everyone who's voting on the NNS, they could say, hey, if I didn't have at least a week on the forum to discuss this or think about it, I'm just going to vote no matter what, no matter whether I agree with the proposal or not. And then we basically could enforce a community agreed upon processes in that sense. And again, coming back to the idea that really what we want to do is work on our decision-making process so that we can have a resilient community and system that'll last 200, 300 years. Another thing, so talking about, you were saying what we could do for the other thing I think that would be that the community should really be engaged in, and more because I'm going to say this specifically because YSIMS had attacked the ICP-MN voting neuron as like an oligarchy.
I had to look up that word. I was really impressed. That was some high quality SAT language that he dropped in there.
Yeah,
I liked it.
Yeah, very well stated. And so to a certain degree, so CycleDAO has been following ICP-MN. I think that they might release some information on when they won't follow and when they will follow. IC devs for a while, they've publicly said that they'll follow ICP-MN if it's not a developer question. And so you do have this situation where ICP-MN currently has, I want to say 8.8% of the voting power following it. And then Definity's got 22%. What I would love is for there to be multiple named neurons where there's groups of people who are coming together, or even just an individual person who's saying, this is the interest I'm representing. This is my voting strategy. And if you agree with this, you should follow me instead. And then what we could maybe get is, a couple dozen options for who we follow, or what combinations of people we follow. And then we have much more decentralization. So, I mean, this is almost like, I want to almost kind of slap people across the face who are complaining about decentralization or centralization of the NNS, and just say, every single person who's listening to this who has any ICP staked, any ICP at all staked, they can actually create their own named neuron, put it up to a vote. The community is very on board with bringing people on as named neurons, as long as you're very transparent on what you're going to do and what your strategy is. We should don't complain about there not being enough named neurons. Go get yourself a named neuron, and I hope people take that to heart and do a lot more of that. So
I was trying to focus on what you were saying, but I was also picturing that I could print shirts that say "I follow Kyle's neuron," that I think could be pretty popular. Do we have to put your whole? We'll print the neuron number on the back. It'll be great.
You could, I mean, you don't even, there doesn't even have to be a named neuron. So part of the
You can just put in the
ICP-MN,
number.
yeah,
So that's actually what I was doing before they were a named neuron. I assigned my follow, especially on governance. I was following Cycle DAO before they were.
Before it was even a named one. Yeah.
Before it was because I talked to Arthur and he told me all about Cycle DAO, and I was like, I want to be following Cycle DAO. That's exactly what I want to be doing with my teeny little piece of political power that I've got.
I mean, IC Devs had about 1 million voting power following it before it even became a named neuron. So they were very successful as well in getting people to follow them. Or maybe IC Devs has 1 million ICP that they're staked. But
I think it's super interesting. I mean, I think maybe you're just trolling to create more high quality data for you to analyze for your newsletter is what you're really after here, I suspect.
Possibly.
Just personal gain as usual. I'm ready to move on.
This is good.
I'm ready to move on. Do you want to have a last word? You want to have a last word, a little coda on this topic before we close it out?
There are members of our community. I'm going to say Wenzel as the prime example, but there's multiple people who deserve recognition who are putting a lot of time and effort for no benefit of their own, other than they are adamant that they want this whole experiment of the NNS to succeed. And I think you may disagree with a lot of the people, and that's great. We should have open dialogue, but at least recognizing the effort put in by members in our community is at least worthy of your time to just say, hey, thanks for all that you're doing for the internet computer. So
I totally agree. I'm incredibly impressed by the amount of work that Wenzel puts into this. And this is not his job. This is his hobby that he does. This is his passion. And so incredibly supportive. His patience for engaging in constructive dialogue far exceeds my own. And is not the tact I would take, but I respect the hell out of it. and I'm so impressed. And Wenzel has, even with my proposal too, Wenzel was one of the first people I showed it to for feedback, and in fact has volunteered to submit my proposal, because submitting a proposal is actually deploying a little bit of Dfinity code via the command line, something I am technically incapable of doing, it appears. And so I am incredibly thankful for everyone that is engaged and leading these discussions and, putting in the work. You've been really active in there. And I encourage, if you are having a strong feeling about what you want to see done in our team democracy here, get on those forums and get your ideas posted. I think, what's one of the things I really, really like about the forums is it really is a meritocracy where I feel like the best ideas rise to the top, and people are genuinely pretty open-minded about what is going to be best for this community, not just what's best for me, and a recognition that people making money from the system is good and the system working as intended. But what we want is a system that's fair and sustainable and doesn't encourage bad faith engagement without keeping out really great ideas. And so I encourage everyone to get in there, get into the various forum posts on this topic, get into the forum posts on my topic. Just please participate and please vote.
Exactly.
And follow Kyle's neuron.
Follow my neuron.
You want to read out your neuron number so we can all,
I'd have to go look it up. It's actually the ICP-MN has put out. So I have a small neuron, which I use just for voting on the ICP-MN, and then all my other neurons follow that small neuron. And so that's actually public information. I could, if you actually wanted it, I could put it out, but I feel like reading a string of 16 digits probably is not the best use of our
That's
time.
just good. That's just good podcasting. No, my actual recommendation is to set your follow neuron to ICEMN, Maximalist Network, for governance topics, and that Kyle is one of the 13 members voting, and it's a really, really great group of people that I have a lot of trust and faith in, and I will continue to follow until Kyle tells me he has gone rogue and started a revolution, which case you have my full support, Captain.
I've joined ICP Reboot. I don't know if anyone remembers that project.
Viva la revolution.
Oh gosh, man,
All right.
2021 is going to be an interesting year to have looked back on in 5 years.
I can't even remember it. It all just disappears into the haze of having a baby and pregnancy in the household and pandemic, and it all feels like a long time ago.
Yeah, it does.
Kyle, we have a giant stack of really, really great Ask Neurotic questions. I want to thank everyone listening for these incredible questions. Really thoughtful. We really appreciate it. Please get in there. Please give us feedback. We'd love to hear from everybody. Tweet at us at Neurotic Pod on Twitter, and we will add you to our show doc. Please let us know what you think. We love getting feedback. First question here today comes from Keen Kelly 1. Keen Kelly asks, what are the real world possibilities that Bitcoin integration provides? If Bitcoin is digital gold, most secure money in the world, etc., how can integration help create lending, DeFi, etc., around Bitcoin ICP that is different from other crypto options today? Scale, new markets, yield, security, etc. And then I want to tag on another question that kind of dovetails with it nicely from Fiona K. Lim. Asks, please explain in simple words how ICP can open the gates for all Bitcoin maximalists without bridges. Thanks, you guys are cool. I like that. I'm easily bought off with compliments when it comes to getting show questions on the air. I think this is a great question. I'm gonna confess, don't tell anyone, about not really entirely understanding. So I understand that the implementation of Bitcoin integration using ICP's proprietary chain key technology means we do not use a bridge. So a bridge, just to back up and give a teeny bit of explanation of a little something I do understand, a bridge means that you actually basically convert into another currency, essentially. And so you don't move your money into that other system. You swap it and convert it into wrapped version or some sort of other coin there, but it's the equivalent of crossing a border and changing your currency, and you no longer have your original currency. You've traded out for this other currency, and this is why bridges are such vectors for attack, is because there's a giant amount of money and liquidity being stored in them at any given moment in order to have the cash on hand to make those exchanges. So that is not how Bitcoin integration is going to work with the Internet Computer. Instead, the Bitcoin will be directly controlled by a canister on ICP. And so you'll be able to the canister and the ICP code will be able to manipulate and use the Bitcoin as if they are like an end user interacting with it, which then opens up all of the smart contracts and blockchain abilities that the Internet Computer has that Bitcoin doesn't, because Bitcoin is just dumb, super valuable digital gold. And the Internet Computer, it's much more of a complex, it's again, more of that Ethereum-like smart contract layer where you have an application, you can engage with it. So I know what all the words I just said mean in general, but what I don't understand is how will I implement that? Like, can I spend Bitcoin in an application? If I move my Bitcoin over and bring it into Sonic, can I use it there in Sonic? And if I am engaging with those applications with the Bitcoin, isn't it just getting transformed or sold or converted into some other currency along the way? So I feel like I understand some of the technical theory and I understand some of the stuff on the other side, but there's like a little yada hand waving right there in the middle that I'm really hoping you can clarify for me.
Yeah. So imagine, I think the best way I can understand it is like this, and it's probably not a great analogy, but it really gets the point across. Is so if you have Bitcoin, you have a public wallet, right, a public key, Everyone can know that. That's fine. That's your wallet ID. And then you have a private key. That's like your password, right? And it's, a bunch of letters and numbers. So chain key technology essentially. So one thing that you might do if you have Bitcoin, you might want to do cold storage where you actually just sit and write down your private key, right? So that way it's not stored on the computer or anything like that. You write it on a piece of paper. Okay, that's kind of common within extreme Bitcoiners, I guess, is that you write your private key on a piece of paper, and that way you can keep control of it. Imagine, so for chain key technology on the internet computer, imagine you wrote down your private key a few times on a couple different pieces of paper, and then you cut them up, right? So now you have multiple pieces of paper, and you go to your friends and you hand each one of them one piece of paper. Okay, so now when you want to spend your Bitcoin, you have to go.
So hold on, I'm gonna ask a question here. Does each piece of paper have the whole key, or does each have a piece of the key?
It has a piece of the key. That's a good question.
So you need all the so the key is a Horcrux, and it has been broken into. Are you doing what Horcrux is? If I just throw out Harry,
no.
Oh, it's a Harry Potter reference.
Oh,
it's fine. I don't mind. So, Voldemort broke. No, key is broken up into multiple pieces, and so each of them have a piece of the key, not the whole key.
Exactly.
And so it's kind of like when they launch a nuclear weapon, they need to turn the two keys simultaneously. It's the same idea where you're distributing the keys and you need all the keys to work together in order to activate it.
Yeah. And so, for you to spend your Bitcoin, you need to know which friends you have to go to reassemble your key. So in that analogy, your friends are nodes on the internet computer, and you are a canister. So your canister has your public ID, and all these boundaries. There's boundary nodes that have parts of your private key, so that and your canister knows how to reassemble that, so that your canister can actually write to the Bitcoin ledger, can actually execute transactions on your behalf, but no single node can do it. No small grouping of nodes can do it. And because remember in our analogy, you wrote it on multiple pieces of paper. So if one of your friends dies, you don't lose your key. You just have to go see a different friend who might have parts of the information that your friend had, and maybe another friend who had another part of that information. So you're in a situation where on the internet computer, you can have nodes fail, or you could have one node be a bad actor, but it doesn't prevent you from writing transactions to Bitcoin. So you're not actually taking Bitcoin and putting it on the IC network. You're allowing the IC network to write to the Bitcoin blockchain on your behalf in a very secure way. So that's awesome, because Bitcoin is 40% of the market cap of crypto. So it's a big chunk of money and a big chunk of the community of crypto. And it's a group of people who are very, very hesitant to allow anyone to have control over their Bitcoin, because there have been so many bad actors in Bitcoin who have stolen private keys, right? Exchanges that have just disappeared overnight and took all the Bitcoin with them. There's Mt. Gox that got hacked. They were too loose with private keys, and millions of dollars of Bitcoin was siphoned away. There's all these things that you've had bridges that have been hacked recently. So that's on the back of people's minds. So in Bitcoin, it's not your keys, not your crypto. This is the first technology that I know of where you can take Bitcoin and introduce it into a smart contract in a way that you still control the keys, or rather, you're not trusting a third party to control your keys for you. Other than you're trusting the code, not a person, not an organization. You're trusting the code behind the chain key technology. So that's high-level word. That doesn't quite get to the question of what can we do with it, but
no, you just explained the same thing I did, just way better. That was what that was. So now that we have both explained that the chain key integration is great, and again, you did it better than me, and sorry about my explanation. Tell me,
I feel really bad now.
No, you should feel great. That was fantastic. This is why I host a podcast with someone way smarter than me, is you get this stuff. But here's the hard question is, so what? So what? So the IC can now interact directly, securely with the Bitcoin, but what does that enable? Maybe a question would be, since none of that functionality exists today, developers will need to build in that functionality. So maybe we can come at it from that angle. What are some of the opportunities that developers now have that they'll be able to add to their applications for end users like us to do with their Bitcoin?
Yeah, so a developer could create a a Bitcoin level two or layer two what would you call that, a layer two technology, where essentially like the lightning network, which allows thousands of transactions and then settles all those transactions to the Bitcoin network in one or two, in just a few transactions. Internet computer can now do that because it can allow all this ecosystem to talk and all these transactions to occur, and then finally just at some interval, maybe at the end of every day, it settles everything back to the Bitcoin network. That's one thing. You could so now imagine this. Now you have the only blockchain that can run web. You can now have an interface completely decentralized, completely on the blockchain, that can interact with Bitcoin ledger. So let's say you had a system where you want to allow somebody to buy Bitcoin and transaction Bitcoin, right? That can be kind of challenging now because, for me, I have a Ledger wallet is how I do cold storage of my Bitcoin. And it's just really a pain. I got to carry this thing around. I got to type in a code. I've got to do all these things. You can now just trust the IC to facilitate all that. So now your user interface, your user experience can vastly change. You could make it so that somebody could buy Bitcoin by just chatting with a bot, right? Buy me some Bitcoin, transfer that Bitcoin to Jesse. That can be Jesse's reward for a successful proposal that I agreed with, kind of thing. And all I'm doing is just chatting with a bot. So
I just want to reiterate that point. Transfer some Bitcoin to Jesse. That's a great idea. I think that's, yeah, I think so. We're kind of getting at it now. So there is, maybe another example would be you want to create a DAO to manage a collection of Bitcoin assets. Right now, it's very easy to create a DAO. We've got the SNSs coming down the pipe very soon. Super excited about that.
mm-hmm.
That's the application layer DAO system, a mini version of the NNS. So I could create a DAO using the SNS, then manage a collection of Bitcoin. So we can so maybe another way of asking it, Will, can Bitcoin be used as a native currency inside of the ICP ecosystem in the future then?
So, I mean, in the end, you're writing back to the Bitcoin blockchain. By the way, that SNS plus Bitcoin, like a Bitcoin DAO, is a phenomenal idea. And I bet you that's going to be a huge avenue for adoption of by the Bitcoin community, right? Because that's not possible right now. So that's amazing. You could have a DAO that can actually just write directly to the Bitcoin ledger.
Right. And that group can vote using the tools of the SNS to send Jesse some Bitcoin.
Yes.
So instead of it just being an informal process controlled by one person, the group can decide to enrich me. I think that'll be my example for all future software development ideas and then you send some money to Jesse.
So your question, what was your question? Because that was a great question. Was can we?
So what can I do with it? So that's the piece that I feel like I'm missing. Is I understand a bunch of the theoretical, but I'm a little confused as to. So essentially, we are the Bitcoin is an engine, it's a store, and then we give the ability for ICP and the ICP smart contract software stack to interact directly with the Bitcoin ledger.
Mm-hmm.
But what do we accomplish? What do we do? When people talk about, we'll open up adding Bitcoin for liquidity pools, for example, right? I've heard that talked about. How will that work? How will that be implemented?
Right. So, I mean, in that case, you could, right. So an immediate benefit is that opening up that 40% of crypto that is in Bitcoin is, so you can imagine a DeFi situation where I own Bitcoin and I want to earn interest on that. So I'm willing to lend it out. So on the IC, I can provide it to a lender.
You could stake it essentially inside of a system built on the IC stack, because it's not currently possible to stake Bitcoin, right?
Right. Yeah. There's no way to do it natively. That you could wrap your Bitcoin and maybe get Ethereum in return or something like that. But yeah, so that could be an example where you have your Bitcoin now in a canister. You have your private key in a canister, so you still control your Bitcoin, But you could have it so, like, let's say Sonic, if they wanted to allow Bitcoin staking, they could make it so that you have to store your Bitcoin in a canister that you still control the private key, but there's also an extra layer where they can put a lock on your Bitcoin. So that way, if you used it for collateral, you couldn't spend your collateral. You had to keep it in there, keep it in the system. Sonic doesn't know your private key, but they can control whether or not you can move that Bitcoin. So maybe you take out a loan until you pay off your loan. You can't move this Bitcoin off this. You can't move this Bitcoin anywhere. So that would be like a good example of how you could use it in a technical feasible way.
Got any other $1 million ideas we can give away here?
Yeah,
What would
gosh.
you like? What would you like to be able to do with your Bitcoin? And let's sort of blue sky it here.
So
What are some of like the features you'd love to be able to do?
I'm not thinking in feature, but one of the ideas, right? So if you think about gold, right? Because they always say Bitcoin's digital gold, and Ethereum's more like cash. And in that mindset, right, when you want to do a new currency, so let's take like the US dollar before it became the reserve currency of the world. The way you build trust in that currency is by pegging it to gold or silver, in like uh, the Romans, they did silver as well. Um, so you peg it to gold because that builds trust. People know that at any point they can take that currency that they're like, I'm not so sure about this currency, and I can convert it back into gold, which is something I feel really confident about. In crypto, we can do the same thing now. So you have digital gold and Bitcoin. Bitcoin's very secure. Proof of work is, Bitcoin's becoming the only proof of work. Bitcoin and Litecoin are going to be the only proof of work coins, and a lot of that is that security. So maybe what you can do is then turn the ICP token into a better medium of exchange that's also pegged back to Bitcoin, and do it in a way that you could almost have an ecosystem where it's only pegged within that ecosystem, maybe like an app or multiple apps. But if you go outside that ecosystem, you lose that peg. But it's really a way that you could build trust into a token that it won't lose its value. And so then you get the benefits of the store of value from Bitcoin and the flexibility, the ability to spend it easily, to do smart contracts with it. You can get that with ICP. So I think that's what I think of as like the future 10 years from now, what I hope we move to.
Yeah, I think when I talk about what is ICP, I oftentimes describe it in a lot of ways is it's a combination of Ethereum with its smart contracts and AWS with its web hosting
Mm-hmm.
all kind of closed up in a package together. But by it almost, Bitcoin adds this like third leg of financial stability and liquidity to the system where we're kind of, it's like a dam to the neighboring lake is about to get opened, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's all going to get, the ability is to flood in and open up those abilities that, all these different blockchains are totally vertically integrated, closed off systems in most cases. And you've just got these little wormholes that are wormholes, bridges that are poking
Mm-hmm.
holes in the system that allow to transfer one way or the other. But this is something different where we've got that direct integration and we're building, not so much a bridge, but like a superstructure that connects and allows the flowing of these two pieces together
Mm-hmm.
and opens up, there's a total pool of liquidity that exists right now in ICP. And this is going to create this, the largest collection of digital liquidity in the world is Bitcoin. And that's going to now be this reserve lake that's available to us. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the idea is opening up the eyes of Bitcoin holders to here's what you'll be able to do with it. Here's these, you've been seeing the features that these Ethereum people have been, adding. Here's a way to get those features without giving up your keys.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think that's it. I mean, as a Bitcoin holder myself, I'd love to be earning 7-8% on that Bitcoin while it just sits there. Um, but I don't want, my buddy's always trying to say, hey, Kyle, here's a referral link. If you just bring your Bitcoin over to, I don't know, Cash App or whatever, crypto.com or whatever he uses to stake it. He's like, then you can get, interest on it. And I was like, yeah, but I don't want to give up my keys. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't trust that crypto.com, I trust them 99% of the time. That 1% is enough. And so if I had a way to kind of maintain knowledge of my keys, or not maintain knowledge of my keys, have a way to know that no human being is firmly in control of my keys, then I would love to put that Bitcoin to work and get some yield on it. So
Yeah, and I'm a little bit outside the Bitcoin world, but one thing I do understand is the keys are everything.
hmm
The keys are the center of the whole piece. So I think there's really a marketing opportunity that's about to be opened up here then. Now I'm just thinking about things I can do.
yeah, yeah,
There's a real marketing opportunity for marketing the internet computer's direct integration with Bitcoin, where you don't earn interest, don't give up your keys. That's an appealing pitch to Bitcoin holders, right?
totally agree.
All right, sounds like I've got my action items for my next big marketing push here. This is great.
Can you push it out by June? Can you get that product out?
I'm gonna push it out by this afternoon.
Oh,
I'm gonna
baby.
get on this here. Well, maybe not this afternoon. I have to edit a podcast today, so
It's just native, just whatever we've been saying, just release it.
perfect. Any last words on Bitcoin integration?
Nah, I think we got pretty far on that. I'll think of
I'm
something later.
excited. I genuinely feel like I learned something today. I'm excited for all these pieces to come online. So the Bitcoin integration's in beta and testnet right now, and we're expecting to see main rollout, and then once the main rollout comes, we'll start to see dev integration. So there is going to be sort of a staged, it's going to take time to bring all these new things online
Mhm.
here. All right, let's move into recommendations. Kyle, what do you have to recommend this week?
I'm laughing because we briefly touched on this before, and you were like, "That's what are you doing, Kyle?" But I'm going to recommend "Life Is Beautiful." It's that movie about the Holocaust. It's the saddest movie you will ever see, but if you watch it, it's one I haven't seen it in maybe 15 years, but it made such a big impact on me, and just in terms of like um, seeing the good aspects of life, and understand that there is evil, and that you can still be a light of good in a world of evil. So I'm recommending people go back and watch Life Is Beautiful.
I've seen a lot of Holocaust movies in my day, and I think there is something interesting and appealing about movies that use that setting to say something interesting, right? And so we were talking about a little bit before, and I brought up Taika Waititi's movie Jojo Rabbit,
Mm-hmm.
where Taika Waititi wrote and directed it, and co-stars in it as imaginary Hitler. And it's sort of like, what if Hobbes from Calvin and Hobbes was your imaginary friend, is kind of the idea. And it's one of those things where on its surface it's very, very offensive, but in practice it's actually very moving and touching. And so I think it's a nice choice.
Yeah, gosh, I'm debating whether. So anyway, so go. Yeah, any Holocaust film just shows you, gives you appreciation for people who went through something as traumatic as that. So like Jojo Rabbit, right? There's the, I don't know. Actually, is this spoiler alert if I say there's somebody living within the walls? Anyways, yeah, those are heartbreaking. It's
There's
heartbreaking.
always Jews hiding in the walls in a Holocaust movie.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess it's not a spoiler, but yeah,
I
it's
mean,
challenging.
it's a for you're talking about in Jojo
Yeah, in
Rabbit.
Jojo Rabbit. Yeah.
As long as you don't spoil Life Is Beautiful, I think we're okay here. So, I mean, spoiler alert for World War II,
Yeah.
So, all right. I'm going to give a recommendation that's a little more fun because your recommendation's a bit of a life affirming downer, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Sorry about that.
So we were talking about documentaries a little bit last week, actually, and I wanted to recommend a movie called King of Kong: A Fistful of Quarters. Have you ever seen this documentary?
I have not. Is it
I
is
am.
it about the monkey King Kong?
It is about the video game
Oh,
King
okay.
Kong.
Okay. Oh, that makes sense.
Specifically, it is about record high score players that obsessively play vintage video games and compete in competitions to get high scores. And what is so fun and interesting about this movie is the documentarian was making a movie generally about vintage video games and competitions, and was profiling people in the space. And while he was making the documentary, new events unfolded in the community while he was making the
Oh,
documentary.
that's
And
awesome.
so it's not just a talking head documentary. It is the camera is there and rolling as these events happen live in front of them, because they just happen to be in the right place at the right time. And so there's an existing a guy named Billy who owns a hot sauce company and is kind of a slippery character, is the world record holder. A challenger emerges who's an ex-Microsoft employee
Oh no.
who is filming his attempts and makes attempts. There is, because the smaller the stakes, the higher the backbiting, in
Okay.
these sort of things. And so there is collusion, there is falsified scores, there is
Oh
faked
man.
VHS tape. It is an incredible human drama. Highly recommended. I really, really love it. I see you highlighting it in our show notes right now to look it up. I don't think it's available on any streaming services, but I think you can rent it for like $3 from Amazon or
Okay.
Apple or anyone. Really, really great, fun documentary. I will watch a documentary about anything except the Holocaust. And so this one, aka the History Channel. But this is a really good one. It's super, super fun, highly, highly entertaining, recommended.
Oh
And it's
man.
kind of it's a nice intersection of kind of nerd culture and that human messy part we were just talking about.
I'm just looking at the pictures on IMDb, and it's like classic 70s haircuts
Oh
on all
yeah.
these characters.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
I'm already loving this. This guy's standing next to an old Pac-Man machine. I'm gonna I'm
Yeah,
I'm gonna I'm
exactly.
gonna
So
watch it.
Billy Mitchell, who's essentially the antagonist in the story, has been the world record holder since he was a kid and kind of coasting on that reputation. And so when Steve Wiebe makes his attempt and Billy Mitchell comes back with new attempts. So there's a lot of back and forth. There's these vintage boards, there's accusations of cheating, there's accusations of collusion. It's just fantastic. I really, really, it's that favorite kind of documentary where you get absorbed in this teeny little world full of real human drama, and also Mario's there. So
Nice. What a great
highly,
game.
highly recommended.
Hey, can I give a shout out? So speaking of which, of like living off of your glory from a long
Mm-hmm.
time. So, and this is kind of a follow up, but it's worth pointing out that Bob NFTs, there is now somebody else solved the puzzle, and he goes by Huge Puppy in the Discord channel. So I don't know where he's at on Twitter or not, but congrats to him. He did leave one ICP and one NFT. So anyone who's still looking, you can still there's still some incentive to finish the puzzle.
That's very exciting. So he solved it and he left it there. Will there be like some sort of final here? I feel like there's this just growing club of people that are, it's like you and who was the other person that solved it?
Huge Puppy.
You and Huge Puppy, great handle. So you and Clifford have solved this puzzle and are now in the special club. I assume Bob is in there too, since he created the puzzle, and it's starting to feel a little exclusive. I'm feeling a little left out.
That would actually, if Bob created like a little so going back to your recommendation, like a leaders board, if Bob actually, maybe he could keep this going by just adding people to the leaders board. So the incentive is you just want to get your name on there, so you're gonna puzzle over these borders.
Yeah.
So
I like it. Well, maybe it's Jesse's turn to do a little code cracking. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to.
there's no you don't have to crack any code.
Well, I am excited for the dramatic reveal in the future, where we'll all learn what Bob has done. I think I'd like to see more of this in the future. This is really fun. I love, you hear about like the CIA has all those different. The CIA has a statue with a code on it in front of their building that no one has ever broken as well. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh no, I hadn't heard that. Oh, it's
Well,
it's in the lobby. It's in the lobby, right?
Yeah, there's so many
Yeah.
codes out there you could be breaking right now.
I like picture codes, ones where I look at cartoons and figure that out. So
Kyle, this has been a great show. I feel like I've really learned a lot today.
yeah, I think we kind of ratcheted up to, I was at like a 10 for a while there, but I thought we brought it back down pretty well. So great content.
I like emotional, fired up Kyle. I like Kyle that just puts it all on the table.
Yeah.
Lets it fly. It works for me.
I'll drink some scotch before our future tapings, because then I get really fired up with some scotch and really philosophical.
All right. Well, I'm gonna ask you about what kind of scotch you like, but I'm gonna save that for the after show in just 30 seconds from now. But before we do that, thank you all for listening. Thank you to everyone that submitted questions. You can ask us questions, send us feedback on Twitter at at Neurotic Pod. You can reach Kyle at Kyle Langham. You can reach me at ICP Jesse. And we will be back with more NNS excitement next week. Say goodbye, Kyle.
See you guys.
Bye. What kind of scotch? You're not one of those people that like gross peaty scotches, are you?
You're about to be so disappointed. I'll just drink any scotch on the rocks.
On the rocks?
Anything you got, I'll drink it. I'll drink whiskey on the rocks. I'm not picky at all. And
have you been to Scotland?
No.
Have you ever had scotch in Scotland? Oh, it's the best. It's so cold and so warming, and it's
yeah.
I didn't used to like scotch particularly. I drank it in college and it made me sick, so it's really pushed me, like cheap scotch and stuff, and it pushed me off of it in college. But then when I was traveling in Japan, I got really, really into Japanese whiskeys. And the high end, there's a couple different sort of classes of Japanese whiskey. Like there's like, the Suntories and like the really light Japanese whiskey. Like, so you see things like Toki, for example, kind of come out of that space where it's a really ultra light. Oftentimes there's rice included in it. But there's also a whole tradition of fancy Japanese whiskey, like Hibiki and Yamazaki, which is my favorite. And so I visited the Yamazaki distillery in outside Osaka, where they use a very traditional Scottish style of creating it. And so it's not peaty, but it's very, very smoky without being ashy. I really, really like it. And so, they've got various, there's the blends, there's like a 12, but like the 18 is like the good stuff. And then I was able to try the 25, a whiskey too fancy for a poor boy like me to drink in reality. But
really?
But,
like you didn't enjoy it at all?
No, I enjoyed it too much.
Too much.
Can't afford. I think a glass of the Yamazaki 25 at the distillery was about $35 for a single pour there. And I'm just going to do a little quick Google search. All right. Well, I searched for Yamazaki 25. The first one that came up on Google is $19,000. And then I'm seeing another bottle here for $17,000. It's an expensive whiskey that I highly recommend if you have the opportunity. But a Yamazaki 12 runs around $100, give or take, for a bottle, which for me is an expensive bottle of booze. That's not bottom shelf stuff, but you get around 20 pours in that bottle, so you're only paying about $5 a shot or so to drink it, and it is luxury in a glass. I really, really love it. The Japanese are, the Japanese thing is refinement, right? They take something and they make it better and better in the smallest little details. And I feel like that's what you really get out of the Yamazaki. And when you're there, we did a whole tour with translation, and then they show you, they have their original casks going back to like 1909. Since they've been making it on site in the same place, and it's all made with a spring that's located on the premises of the grounds.
That's cool.
And then at the end of it, they bring you to a room and they teach you how to make a perfect Japanese highball, which is, soda water, scotch, and a little lemon peel usually. Right. And you made it with sparkling spring water from the spring that they make the whiskey from in the first place. And I want it right now. Oh, it's so good. Maybe I'll go have a little sip of scotch when we get off this call here.
If just doing this podcast is going to cost you $200 in scotch.
No, I've got the reserve. I brought a bottles when we were in Japan. I would hunt for it everywhere. So I'd go into all these liquor stores everywhere and taste, ask them if they have it, and most would say no, but every once in a while they'd surprise you and they'd have some of the good stuff. And so they're sort of the marked up price, but you could find it for like the original retail price in some places and things like that too, which is again still a very expensive bottle of whiskey, but not $17,000 for a bottle of whiskey or anything.
I've had, and I feel this way with beer, although this is less common in beer, but in wine, like I've had bottles of wine that were $300-$400. I wasn't paying for it, so but
no, I would never pay for it.
But it's one of those things where I'm like, this is marginally better than like a good $20 bottle of wine. Um, like I could see that it's better, but it's not uh $480 better, right? Like
No,
I'd rather
no.
have 25 bottles of $20 wine than one bottle of $500 wine, because that's going to be a much more
Yeah,
fun
but
night.
you would just stake the wine for 8 years. You wouldn't even
I
drink it and
probably
enjoy
would.
it anyway.
I
So yeah, I think with a lot of wine's a good example, and this is true for a lot of spirits, is you've got like your bottom shelf stuff, the cheap stuff. So like using like wine as an example,
mhm.
you have your what we'll call Costco, Trader Joe's, liquor store bottles. Those, I've drinking a lot of $12 rosé in my day, and so or rosé all day,
Rosé
and
all day.
and so, around $20, you get a nice bump in quality in
Mhm.
a lot of ways. That $20 to $30 price point is like where I really like to buy a lot of wine. I drink natural wine,
Mhm.
fancy, low intervention, no sulfur wine. But after that sort of $30 price point, there's a big $30 to $100 range, I would say, where wine in that space it's better than the $20 bottle. Is
Mhm.
it better than, is a $100 bottle 5 times better? Is it
Right.
incrementally better? I
Or
don't know.
is it
Who's to
even
say?
like, is an $80 bottle of wine even better than a $40 bottle of wine?
Exactly. I think you get yeah. I think you're paying for label, you're paying for name. You're also like with so much of this stuff, the way it's maintained and how it's treated, how it's stored, especially if it's got any age on it, those make a huge difference. But after you get above $100, you're paying for reputation, you're paying for
Yeah.
rarity. You're certainly not paying for ingredients, right?
Right.
You're paying for story, heritage, or you're just paying markup because it's what the market will bear because there's enough demand for it.
Right.
So, what do you pair any food with your scotch in the evening? What do you like to have with your
No,
scotch?
and I haven't had scotch in a while. I've got a bottle of whiskey, but I haven't really touched that. We've really just been drinking more wine. But honestly, we don't pair things. We just my wife,
Mm.
whatever my wife. We've got 4 kids, so whatever my wife is making, that's and
We
whatever
pair
alcohol
it
I
with
have on.
sitting in silence. We pair our alcohol with sitting in complete silence,
Yeah,
hoping that the children don't wake up.
yeah, and so I mean, to a certain degree, and this is actually just my personality, is I don't like the fancier stuff in life. I'm not really all that interested in.
Mhm.
I do enjoy like, oh, this is a nicer wine than the black box I usually get. Um,
Sure.
but I'm perfectly
There's
happy.
nothing. There's nothing. I'll defend. There's absolutely nothing wrong with box wine,
Yeah.
and I think it's actually there's a lot of upside to it. Back when I owned a restaurant, we served draft wine, so we actually
Hmm.
bought wine in
That's
five
interesting.
gallon kegs. Yeah, and so we had the wine. The wine was served on draft, which was really nice because there was no glass. It
Hmm.
was super effective. We could give people pours. We could hit people with whatever size pour they wanted.
Hmm.
It created like interesting. We had to run a separate gas line for powering the because you can't
You.
do CO2 onto the wine because it would carbonate the
Oh
wine
yeah,
just like a beer. So
yeah.
we had the wine basically had to be on it. So the red wine was actually
So
stored outside of the cooling system that the beer was in, and then the keg line ran inside and then came back out the tap. And so we actually
what do you? Is it just pressurized air or hydrogen?
no, yeah, it was nitrogen, or I think
Nitrogen.
people
Okay.
use like argon or something like
Ugh.
that. You have to use nitrogen, use an inert gas
Okay.
to push it out that won't be absorbed, or if it is absorbed, it won't come out of solution
Okay.
in the wine.
Yeah. Interesting. But yeah, so that's
Yeah,
a
same thing with beer. When you have beer, you have to do what's called balancing the tap line, and so you have to have the right balance of CO2 in
mhm.
order for the system to pour the beer without foaming, all over
Right,
the place
right.
when you pour it. And you don't want the beer to absorb that additional CO2 over time. You want the beer to be at the right level of pressure to balance it.
Yeah.
So
So for
this has
you,
been tap line design with Jesse.
well, I mean, you're an expert on that, because of your career that's just been straight lined, like we were talking about. So now, wait, so because you like to cook, right? You do a lot of cook.
Yeah.
Do you pair? So do you guys pair? Like, are you like, oh, I'm making pork tonight, so we're gonna have a nice what would you have with pork? A nice red wine or
You
something
compare you compare anything
with pork.
with pork. I eat the most pork I've ever eaten in my life these days. I eat a lot of pork because I've got a local farmer that I get all my pork from, and it is amazing. It is
Nice.
so good. It's really, really good.
You taste the
We get
difference?
pork chops. Oh yeah, yeah. Especially in like the fat.
Hmm.
The fat has like a texture that's different. It has like, especially on the pork chops, the fat, I describe it as tasting like water. Like, you ever have like seafood and you're like, this tastes like the ocean,
Yeah.
you know, and you're
Like
just like
salt
that
water.
clarity, that cleanness to it.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what this pork is like. You taste it and you're like, this tastes like an open field. This tastes like a brisk farm morning.
I'm guessing like
Um,
this is probably like more pasture raised
oh yeah,
pork and
yeah,
stuff. Okay.
completely pasture raised. Yeah, I mean, super sustainable,
Hmm.
humane, ethical. So it is much more expensive than commodity pork,
Okay.
but I also don't feel like trash eating it. And, I don't want to get too far out on a limb here, but there's a lot of things broken with the American food
Yeah.
system. And the reason everyone develops autoimmune diseases is the industrialization
Yeah.
of the food system. So, especially now that we have a baby in the house, we pay even more attention to where's the food coming from, how can we avoid processed wheat, how can we avoid
Yeah.
processed sugar, how can we cook with real food, not manufactured products,
Hmm.
masquerading as food that are just cornstarch bound, corn syrup bound together with binders, and try and keep those preservatives and sugars and fake sugars out of our.
Yeah.
But yeah, I actually, so when I was running the brewery, doing beer dinners and pairing was a huge part of what I did actually. So we did a
That
lot
makes
of beer
sense.
dinners, and a big push I would always make was treating beer with the same respect wine got. And
Okay.
so I would work with local chefs, and we would plan these different dinners. We would pair dinners. Actually, it was funny. We were just on Twitter the other day. There was having a series of nostalgic tweets on my personal account, posting menus from a beer dinner I did with a restaurant in San Francisco called Lazy Bear. That's a fine dining coursed restaurant,
Okay.
kind of like not exactly like French Laundry, but that same sort of prefix, very expensive 3-hour meal,
Right.
16 course small bite. So we did 16 pairings for 16 courses over the course of the dinner. It
Did you
was
say
a
16?
16. We went into,
Holy
yeah, we had a
cow.
lot of aged and reserved beers that we pulled out, and
You
we
had
do
16
small.
different beers to pair,
Yeah,
or you were
yeah.
just like, here's three, but we'll pair them 16 different ways?
No, no, no. 16 beers for 16 courses,
Oh,
which
wow.
is I would agree, too many
Were
beers
these like
for
small
too many.
batch beers? You're not making.
Yeah, they're all small batch.
Okay.
Yeah, these are. I mean, we everything was in bottles, but we did a lot of, the brewery. We made seasonal beers. We did a lot of Belgian
Hmm.
inspired sour style beers with local fruit. So that was, our kind of core. The brewery is called Almanac. The core idea was farm to barrel brewing. So we would collaborate with local farmers and bring local fruit into our beers in order to create a sense of terroir, which is like a sense of place, a sense of dirt.
Mm,
That's so important to wine. You hear about, oh, this wine came from this one hillside that gets hit by the light in this way.
right.
Beer's the opposite. Beer's made from ingredients that are dried, stabilized, and you can make beer year round with these stable ingredients. You can
Hmm.
only make wine in the fall at wine harvest, and then
Okay.
you have a year's supply. Whereas beer, everything is stabilized and in fact blended and industrialized
Hmm.
because of how the beer and supplier industry developed after Prohibition. And so we would work with all these local farmers in order to infuse back into the beers a sense of terroir.
Okay.
And so we did a beer dinner with Lazy Bear, and we did a 16-course beer dinner with 16 different beers. And a lot of them, we called it beer bottle share style. And so we dropped the bottles on the table and gave people a couple sample glasses and let them pour
Oh,
themselves
okay.
little
Okay.
little tastes and accumulate bottles as the evening went on. But yeah, I love to cook and I like pairing. I think pairing's really fun,
Hmm.
especially with like the beers. There's all sorts of cool flavors and there's lots of different ways to approach it, right? So you can do what I call matchy pairings, right? Where you do, okay, we're going to do this flavor is similar to this flavor. So we're going to like match them together,
Mm,
right? So pairing uh, beef bourguignon, which is like a French beef stew braised in, red wine, usually like Pinot Noir.
mm.
You serve that with Pinot Noir. So it's like matchy.
Okay.
Or you can do contrasting, kind of pairings, such as I always like to pair double IPAs, which are bitter
Right.
and citrus. I love to do those with dessert. because you get that bitterness, and that sweetness acts as like a contrast to cut through. Think of the way like lemon pairs with seafood, right? Lemon
Right.
cuts through the flavor and brightens it and provides balance. So you can integrate the flavors of your pairing into the flavors of your dish. And the whole idea is that you put these things together and they become more than the sum of their parts, right? Which is what cooking is too, right?
Right.
You have cheese, you have a tortilla, and those things are both great, but you put them together and you have a quesadilla, and it's just hot, warm happiness in your face, right? And the same idea with putting together a beer pairing, where it doesn't have to be fussy. It can be, there's nothing wrong with the classics. There's a
Yeah.
reason, a Corona with a lime is the best with fish tacos,
Right.
That there's a history of these things going together, and what grows together goes together, and kind of trying to tap into that, where so something I love. I really enjoy it.
Yeah. I can tell.
You do? Yeah. Do you do any cooking at home?
I cook not often.
Do you have like a dad specialty dish that you make? What do you make for the kids when mom goes out of town?
Have you heard of Cincinnati chili? So it's basically like a chili you put on top of spaghetti.
This will be the last episode of the Neurotic podcast. We'd like to thank you all for not putting cinnamon in your chili and
dark chocolate. Don't forget about the dark chocolate. That's the key.
So people will invite. This is the culinary equivalent of a rug pull. Actually, friends say to you, "Hey, I'm making chili. You want to come over for dinner?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course I want to come over for dinner. I love chili." And then you get over there and they say something real suspicious like, "The pasta's almost done."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "What do you mean
There's
pasta's
no pasta
almost done?" And they said, "Hold on a sec. Let me finish shredding 4 pounds of cheddar cheese." So why don't you explain what the disgusting dish of Cincinnati chili is, and then I'll explain why I don't like. I also put beans in my chili, so people from Texas hate me. So just full of divisive chili opinions all over the place.
So yes, so you have opinions on Cincinnati chili, and you're dead wrong on all of them. So no, you're right. You're right if you haven't had it before, but if you came over. There's been a lot of people.
What I like is the edit point you're giving me right there to cut out your dead wrong and just go with, well, you have opinions and you're right.
You're right. So it's a chili that is more liquidy, so it goes on the spaghetti a lot better. But it's very spiced, right? It's got a lot of flavor. I like to put cheese and kidney beans on mine, and then I'll put up uncooked onions, diced onions, and it's just phenomenal. It's easy because I can make like 4 batches at once, and then freeze 3 of the batches, so that way when I need a meal, I can just basically put it in a pot, get it going, cook some noodles. My kids are happy. A lot of my kids' friends have came over, and they're like, "What in the world are you talking about with the Cincinnati chili? I'm not that interested." And once they have it, they're like, "Next time you have this, invite me over." So I'll say, kids love it. I love it. My wife loves it. My wife's family loves it. There's nobody who doesn't love it. It's the greatest thing to come out of Cincinnati, bar none.
I mean, I'm willing to accept that. It's the best thing to come out of Cincinnati. I don't really have a counterpoint to that, it's kind of sweet. It's cinnamony. It's served over undressed. You don't even dress the noodles in it like a nice Italian pasta. It's just
just
raw
put the noodles
straight from the raw noodles. Usually been sitting in the strainer for a while, and then you plate of noodles, and then your gross cinnamon flavored chili. It's like, what if chili was crossed with red hot candy or big red gum? And
it's not that cinnamony. You got a lot of chili powder, and the chili powder is really what comes through the most. Maybe a little bit of cumin flavor. The cinnamon is just a little hint.
And then a small mountain of neon orange shredded sharp cheddar cheese, which actually I like. I like that part. I like the cheese part.
You serve it with a nice side of cornbread, right? Or what was my wife called? Sweet onion bread. It's good stuff, man.
Yeah, I like a sweet onion bread or
Hmm.
like a pull apart kind of monkey bread kind of thing
Mm.
or something like
Yeah, that
that
would be
in
good.
there. Super, super. Because what that meal needs is more carbs, to
Right.
help balance out
There's
the
no
first
there's
batch of
no
carbs.
vegetables. That's probably why the kids love it. Is it's vegetable free. My wife's real big on vegetables, but this is like the one meal where she like is okay with there just being zero vegetables involved at all, unless you consider it an onion a vegetable. So
No, an onion is an allium. Doesn't really count as a. It's an aromatic, right? It doesn't count as a
wow.
vegetable, does it? I don't know. I'm actually we make chili pretty regularly here. I like making chili. The wife is a big fan of when I make it. I
Hmm.
make like a mole, like a Mexican mole
Oh
inspired
yeah,
chili
that sounds
is what I
good.
like to do. And so we keep a big collection of dried peppers in, everyone's got like their little culinary bag of tricks. And what's nice about the pandemic is I have become a much, much, much better cook over the course of the pandemic because I went from cooking dinner a couple nights a week to cooking every single meal, every
Mm,
single day during the pandemic. But it also really my poor long-suffering wife got real sick of my bag of tricks because everyone's got that like culinary
yeah,
bag of tricks, the couple things they're good at, those crutches they lean on.
yeah.
And boy did were right around the time she was sick of eating sourdough. It was the time she's like, I get it. This is how you like to make, things like chili.
Hmm.
But I love using Mexican dried peppers.
Okay.
So you can buy them at like any supermarket, and they come in a ton of different flavors, but they're dry. And you tear them open, dump out all the seeds, and then you toast them in you put a dry pan. You
Toast the
toast them in
seeds
the
or
dry
toast
pan.
the pepper,
No,
the
you
skin.
throw out the seeds, you take the
Okay.
skins. So it's like papery, and
Hmm.
there's like small ones or big ones. And you toast them until they sort of puff like a tortilla and smoke just a teeny bit
Ooh.
and smell aromatic. Then you take those and you put them in I put them in a blender, and you cover them with boiling water. And then my secret ingredient in my chili is I take a block of Mexican hot chocolate, which
Ooh.
is chocolate that has been flavored. I mean, I
Like
just
a
finished
ghost pepper
complaining
or
about
something?
cinnamon.
Yeah.
No, no, no. It's like an actual. It's a thing in Mexico. It comes in little discs, chocolate discs, and you break off a piece.
Okay.
But I think it has like some nuts and some spices in it. So I put that in with the chilies to hold them under the water. Let that soak for a couple of minutes, and then turn the blender on and turn that into just sort of this delicious chocolate chili paste.
Okay.
And then that becomes the base of my chili, usually
Oh,
with
I
like
see.
ground beef or something like that. And
Okay.
then I really like, I mean, I know it's highly offensive to our Texan friends out there, but I really like
Toast
beans
some beans.
in
Yeah.
my
Get
chili.
some
I
protein
like
in
beans
there
in the chili.
with the meat.
Little sharp cheddar, little creme fraiche on top, little raw. I love the raw onion.
Hmm.
You ever have malt vinegar on top of chili? Is
Ooh, I
really,
could actually see
really
that being
great.
pretty good.
And
Yeah.
then my wife also loves vegetables, and so usually does she'll serve it with carrot and celery sticks usually
Okay.
on the
Okay.
side,
Yeah.
and then like either tortillas or chips if we're really going for it. Go with some tortilla chips on there. So
So yes, so you have opinions on Cincinnati chili, and you're right.